These discussions will be ongoing as we seek to establish common ground upon which to overcome these social, economic, and political adversities. Upon deep reflection of the current state of world affairs, I have chosen to address you this evening on the subject of making the difference. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt that today civilization is overwhelmed by unprecedented irregularities, daunting complexities, and seemingly irreversible conflicts and controversies, the likes of which seem to know no boundaries. Challenges of hitherto unimaginable and unquantifiable dimensions abound, some glaringly obvious, others lurking treacherously in the dark, waiting to pounce upon our societies, many of which lack the capacity or resources with which to confront the devastating assaults and their grave consequences. The measure of our success in arresting these consecutive multifaceted threats to international peace and stability will be influenced by two factors. Firstly, the depth of our own appetite for knowledge, for truth, for wisdom and understanding. And secondly, the intensity of the passion with which we cultivate to comprehensively reject inept, misguided, and corrupt governance and ideologies, to replace them with leadership committed to the impregnable attributes of integrity, honesty, sincerity, and morality in public affairs. We want to be making the difference between shaping the society the way we know best, creating human conditions in which peace, harmony, equality of opportunity, and prosperity for all override all conflicting considerations, as opposed to settling for dismal levels of leadership which stand in the way of growth, development, and progress, debasing the dignity of man and condemning multitudes to a state of perpetual poverty. The choice is yours. Making the difference in reconfiguring a new world moral and spiritual order where human rights and the welfare and well-being of all are given precedence over divisiveness and discord, where men, women, and children can engage in enriching, enlightening, and elevating pursuits, free from fear of those whose minds are enslaved by diabolically contrasting ideologies, those who seek to rain tribulation, tumult, and terrorism upon the brotherhood of man. The choice of making that difference is yours. It was Martin Luther King who cautioned us that, and I quote, "Our scientific power has outrun our spiritual power. We have guided missiles and misguided men." Unquote. Undeniable premonitions of the wicked world of terrorism, and I need not say any more about that. We see it every day, we live it every day, and we wonder about the depths of man's continued inhumanity to man. But here's the dilemma that we currently face. How do we reverse the trend of witnessing so many of today's world leaders letting us down? Being led in shame and disgrace, in and out of the precincts of local and international halls of justice, having failed to live up to the codes of conduct to which they swore compliance. In capitulating to such malpractices, they deny us the celebrated heights of human righteousness, heights so eminently epitomized in the outstanding stature of our most illustrious leaders, the Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Medgar Evers Wiley, and John F. Kennedy, among the few. Medgar Wiley Evers stood shoulder to shoulder alongside those civil rights leaders who dedicated their lives to the cause of freedom, because of dignity and personal fulfillment. He was a defiant pillar of strength to the growing educational, economic, cultural, and social foundations of the central Brooklyn community and New York City. An extraordinary exemplar in whose name we gather to honor and applaud these iconic awardees for their contribution to the noble cause which we so joyfully celebrate today. It is no secret that black colleges and universities were established in these United States of America, specifically to serve the educational needs of black Americans who for generations were denied admission to traditionally white institutions. Former President George Bush is quoted as describing the unique mission of black colleges in these words, and I quote, "At a time when many schools barred their doors to black Americans, these colleges offered the best and often the only opportunity for a higher education," unquote. Today, we take justifiable pride in the fact that graduates from these black colleges and universities included women of the caliber of Patricia Harris, former Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health, Education and Welfare, Mary McLeod Bethune, founder of the Cookman College, Krista McAuliffe, first educator to have ventured into space, and Leontine Price, world-renowned opera singer. We credit men of eminence like Thurgood Marshall, Supreme Court Justice, Louis Sullivan, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and of course, the indomitable Martin Luther King Jr., recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, and W.B. Du Bois, sociologist, educator, and co-founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Du Bois became the first African American to earn a PhD from Harvard University. Ironically, Dr. Du Bois, frequently quoted by one of our educators, Dr. Eric Williams, died on August 27, 1963, one day before Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his seminal discourse at the March in Washington. And he said, "I have a dream. This college is living that dream, and the dream is becoming reality." These celebrated heroes of the Black liberation movement stand proudly immortalized by the philosophies that they've left behind. And thankfully, they've left behind this place, this college, this vision, this future. Here's what Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois had to say about education. And I quote, he said, "Education is that whole system of human training within and without the schoolhouse walls, which molds and develops men," unquote. But Martin Luther King also reminded us, and I quote him on the subject, and he said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically." He said, "Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education," unquote. We owe a debt of gratitude to the West Indians and the descendants of West Indian parentage who played significant roles in the civil rights movement. The Jamaican-born Marcus Garvey and writer Claude Mackay both played key roles in the Harlem Renaissance. And that was a very significant renaissance of black artists in the 20s and 30s. Other key figures also include Malcolm X, formerly called Malcolm Little, the renowned actor Sidney Poitier, and of course, Harry Belafonte, who is reported to have personally financed much of Martin Luther King's activities. And by no means least, remember Stokely Carmichael?
100%. That's all. That's all.
some people ascribe the term black power, the philosophy of black recognition and the requirement to share what the country had to offer, what the world had to offer. Ascribe that to Stokely Carmichael. And of course, Harris Belafonte. Well, some people say that, right? It might be debated, but Harry Belafonte in 1956, he sold the first long-playing album. It sold at million records. Maybe that's what everybody else aspires to when they go into the studio. We of the Caribbean lay claim to men like former Secretary of State Colin Powell, whose parents were both born in Jamaica, and former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, whose father and maternal grandparents were born in Barbados. Of course, when it came to creating Caribbean music and introducing and infusing the island rhythms into New York, whether it was in Fulton, in Nordstrom, who can forget Charlie? Charlie sang it. That's Charlie.
Charlie
In this long-standing engagement of the Caribbean man with Black America in the ongoing struggle for freedom, liberation, and recognition, that has perhaps instinctively given rise to one of the most positive developments in international education cooperation, now being pioneered by the MEC Evers College. Only recently, your provost and your director of international education signed a statement of shared interests, which commits to broad terms of collaboration with the University of Trinidad and Tobago, UTT. And this will result in very valuable student and faculty exchange programs and sharing of advanced techniques and technologies and teaching methods drawn from the experience of both institutions. I am told that similar agreements have been signed with institutions of higher learning in Guyana, Grenada, and Puerto Rico. I'm also very excited about the concept of establishing a consortium of the various campuses of the City University of New York and Caribbean universities to oversee this initiative, which will bring mutual benefits to our respective communities. The possibilities are fathomless, and soon we expect that the Regional University of the West Indies will join the ranks and become part of this pipeline of exchanges between New York and the Caribbean. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that many of you are anxiously expecting me to turn to some attention
to Trinidad and
that might mention Trinidad and Tobago specifically.
Of course. What is the update?
Well, that having been recognized, permit me to give a brief overview of our government stewardship to date. Since assuming office just about 8 months ago, the government which I have the honor and privilege to lead has been making steady progress. We have been doing so objectively, systematically, and without the excess of expensive fanfare. Step by step, we have been putting the modalities in place to steer the nation's ship to a state towards recovery and restoration from a traumatic and painful period of 5 years of reckless, irresponsible,
Squandermania, squandermania, squandermania. Somebody have to make a deal. Lock them up. Somebody have to make a prison.
The special entities which we have set up and the series of bold initiatives which we have taken in our quest for a much improved quality of life for all are taking root. We are tackling waste, inefficiency, and corruption.
Lock them up.
We are restoring good order and good governance to a people who are crying out for these values. We are operating a smaller cabinet.